There's a couple expressions. Be careful what you wish for. You might get it, right? There's national parties celebrating when Kentucky loses. Kentucky did, in fact, lose to Kansas State. And listening to some people portray it, Kansas State is sisters of the poor U. Like they somehow managed to get together 5 basketball players of 0-star caliber and get them to play like Kansas State was actually second place in the Big 12. More remarkable by their win last night over Kentucky was not the win over Kentucky. It's that they did so mostly without Dean Wade, who is either their best or second best players, first team all Big 12. He played some of the game on a minutes restriction, but he's been playing with a foot that there's a stress reaction to, not a stress fracture to. And then Xavier Sneed, probably their most talented player, who's been their third best player all season, was saddled with foul trouble the entire late in the second half, and yet they still took down mighty Kentucky. There's a couple different things kind of at work here. First is, yes, I've covered the college basketball since I played college basketball, so we're going 20 years deep now, 15 years of covering it. And for those of you who only pay attention to Kentucky across the front of their chest and assume these are all lottery picks, that's not who this is who these guys are. They're not a very good shooting team. It's a new batch. They didn't have any upperclassmen, and there was some really good at the end of the season and some not so good. And they were beaten by a team which was not inferior, not superior, was a slight mix of the two. What I think is fascinating is, speaking of cliches or expressions that are overused, what doesn't kill us will make us stronger, right? That's one of them. But what about what builds us can ultimately take us down? I mean, look, the NCAA tournament's going to be taken down by too many of these Cinderellas. We can celebrate as much as we'd like the fact that Loyola of Chicago won again. How about this? Their third win in the tournament by a total of 4 points. If that's not Lady Luck, I don't know what is. And yet we can say, hey, this tournament is built upon upsets. America loves the Cinderella. But if Clemson wins 2 more games and Texas Tech wins 2 more games, it will be a tournament that we say is built on upsets that no one will watch. It's on cable this year in the Final Four, and people just, they say they want to see the Cinderella until the Cinderella is playing on TV, and then history tells us they don't. But the tournament is built on the idea that anyone can beat anybody. But what we really want is a nobody to almost beat a somebody, but then the somebodies to ultimately play. That's the same thing as John Calipari. It's built upon the idea that he does it all with one-and-dones and all with young players. And he has done it mostly with young players. He has done it mostly with one-and-done since he's gotten to Kentucky. He also at times has gotten lucky. Remember, in 2012, the one time he won a national championship with Kentucky, he did so with Anthony Davis, with a bunch of they weren't all young players. He did have some older pieces sprinkled in that did help him along the way. Some he didn't have this year. The other part is he kind of got lucky in that run. Syracuse was one of the top 3 teams in the country, and their center, Fab Melo, was suspended before the tournament began, and they didn't make it to the Final Four. North Carolina had lost to Kentucky that year by 2 points, and their point guard, Kendall Marshall, a first-round draft pick, broke his wrist, and they lost in the Elite Eight without Kendall Marshall. So he didn't actually play against the other 2 best teams in the country. There was some luck. And so while we're told he only wins with young players, and this is what young players do, it's mostly true. But oftentimes what we're built upon will, in fact, bring us down. Kobe Bryant's legacy of being an alpha, unabashed and unafraid to take the big shot, and the fact that he wanted everybody else. If you wanted to come and play for the Lakers, you had to be willing to put up with Kobe Bryant. You had to be willing to take the ball from Kobe Bryant. What made Kobe Bryant great has really had Kobe struggle late in his career because no one else wanted to come play with him. And I'm sure that's a tough adjustment in life now. in that you've always been the leader, the alpha, the singular driving force behind something, and it drove Shaq crazy, it drove coaches crazy, it drove teammates crazy, and other stars are like, yeah, it's not really what I want to do. And yet no one would argue with the incredible, transcendent talent that is Kobe Bryant. That's hard to deal with. The same is true with John Calipari. He was, I don't even call him a trendsetter, is not really. He's one of those guys that is ingenious in that his timing has been perfect. He landed at the perfect job, at the perfect time, in the perfect place. Kentucky has always been about glitz, glamour, recruiting. Go out and try and get the best guys to come to campus, and we'll blow them away with how much we love Kentucky basketball and how bigger than life it actually is. So it's been. And you coincide that with the one-and-done era, and it's been a mutually beneficial relationship between the two. And I could easily make the case that this was his best coaching job. They actually ran nice offense last night. They actually moved the ball quite well. They just don't have that many guys that can put the actual basketball in the bucket, and they struggled to guard their mismatched pieces from Kansas State. And Kansas State, you got guys that have been told no, and Kentucky guys that have been told yes their whole life. And so when a ball's on the floor, I'm guessing the Kansas State guy's going to get it because the Kentucky guy makes a business decision. And so the same thing that this program was built upon, going out and find out the 20 best players in the country and trying to get 5 or 6 of them, which is exactly what he did. When you miss on a position, like point guard, when you don't recruit enough shooting, when your big guys are a little bit less than they used to be, and you have other players that don't want to hang around, Charles Matthews, for example, averaged 1 point a game last year for Kentucky. He had 18 last night for Michigan. Right? Like, what this program has been built around is the next group of the younger guys, the next group of younger guys. And some of it is a trend in college basketball, and that older guys don't want to hang around, don't want to be bench players. But they have been you come in, you get your work done, you go off to the NBA. What happens if you stay? Nobody ever talks about that. John Calipari tweeted this morning, I woke up this morning feeling sick as I did last night after the game. This is going to hurt for a while. For all of us, the players took it as hard as any team I've had when it ends. What they accomplished this year can never be taken away. To play like they played all year, coming together, battling through adversity, continuing to work every day and representing us the way they did is truly amazing. I'm not disputing any of that. But what happens when you are the first in, everybody's coming to take a shot at you. And as has been documented, Duke is now doing a better job of recruiting a higher end of one-and-dones. Duke also, let's be honest, benefits from the fact that Grayson Allen has remained in school all 4 years. That's why Duke is an 11.5-point favorite tonight against Syracuse. It's not because their freshmen are that much better, but they have an upperclassman to go along with those freshmen. And yes, the freshmen that they have do seem to shoot the basketball better, and shooting is paramount in success in both college and in professional basketball. So what happens when you're the first one in, what happens when you build a foundation based upon young players coming in, getting their work done, going to the NBA is, one, everybody copies it, and two, there's some ancillary factors that allow you to succeed, and three, because that's the culture you've built. Now, all of a sudden, you got a group of, I'd say, 5 or 6 freshmen who probably shouldn't declare for the NBA draft. But do I stay and get recruited over? Do I stay and somehow there's a scarlet letter because I'm the guy who stayed? Do I transfer and go and play somewhere else? Or do I go to the NBA because that's what Kentucky guys do? And ultimately, the cycle remakes itself. And Calipari starts and has some uneven performances and says, we're young, we're young, we're young. And he yells and he screams and the teams get better. But ultimately, 18 and 19 doesn't beat 21, 22, and 23. The story of the NCAA tournament is no different than the story of the 1988 Olympics, right? Do you know why we sent our NBA players to the Olympics? Because we got beat. And we got beat because they were sending men and we were sending boys. We were sending college kids, they were sending pros, and they beat us handily, and they were going to continue to beat us. So we're like, fine, we'll send our best guys. So men beat boys, seniors beat freshmen, and what Coach Cal established, what he created, is partially undoing the success of what he established and what he created.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.